Siman Lamed Ches, and we're up to Gimel. He says, "Le'oser pas shel oivik achavim, elo shechameshes minei dogon." The din of a pas that we talk about now, Pas Akum, is only referring to if it's made from the 5 species of grain. That's the wheat and the barley and the spelt and the rye and the oats. That's the 5 species. Because that's called pas. Avo pas kidneys, but a pas that's made from kidneys is like beblach, legumes. Eina b'chal pas. It's not considered pas. So it doesn't apply to the ishayl of pas. V'gam eina b'chal bishul oiv dekachavim. Now, l'chayre, if it's not a pas, so then, but a guy cooked it, so it's like a meal. It's like a meal in the form of bread. So if a guy would cook, let's say, a pot of beans, it would be a shayla bishul akum. So now if he made a pas, it's in the shape of a bishul. He says, but it's not a problem. The ha'ena oila al shulchan malachim, because it's not oila al shulchan malachim. In the pshat of shulchan malachim, what does it mean oila al shulchan malachim? So the popular way to teach oila al shulchan malachim is, for us, I mean, we don't really have a melech, okay, but you can say maybe a president, but the idea is, would they serve it at a prominent meal? Bread that's not made from the chameshes mina dogim, they wouldn't serve it at a prominent meal. It's not a shagam, Moshe. There's always a question by, let's say, I'll give you an example. There's a question, let's say, by potato chips. Does potato chips need bishul yisrael? You have from companies that make potato chips, and where do they make it? They don't have no factories that they make potato chips. They go, let's say, to Weiss potato chips or to Lay potato chips, and they're there and they turn on the fire. So they turn on the fire. That is bishul, so like we discussed, and we'll learn it again later. So the question is, does potato chips need a mushel? So some want to hold, I'm not saying that everyone holds that way, some want to hold that snack foods are not really a food. It has to be a food that's that you would serve. When you make a wedding, so you have the main dish, and in the main dish there's a portion of meat or chicken, and then later there's side dishes. So they want to. So the question I say, is potatoes a meichel that would be oila shulchan malachim? They used to call them in Hebrew. They used to call them tapuchei adama. Tapuch is an apple. There's apples that grow up on trees, and there's apples that are in the ground. So potato chips not. The question is potatoes a meichel that's oila shulchan malachim? So the truth is, if I remember correctly, in the Aruch HaShulchan, the Aruch HaShulchan was a Litvish Rav. He's the father of the Torah Tamim Chumash. You have the Rebbe used to use a Chumash always when he had the Haftarah, so he would come up together with a Chumash that he was holding, and the Chumash was a Torah Tamim Chumash. Torah Tamim Chumash was made by a person by the name Epstein. And his father made the Aruch HaShulchan. So I think that the Aruch HaShulchan, I didn't check it. I think that the Aruch HaShulchan says that potatoes is not Oil HaShulchan Malachim. Why? Because also there's a question of Moshe. Let's say, is corn Oil HaShulchan Malachim? They call corn. They used to call it kakaruza. Is it Oil HaShulchan? What's the shayla? Because Amol Gezeiten, this wasn't a choshev of Michael. A potato wasn't a choshev of Michael. Or corn, even Adayem to Zeh, they raise corn to feed animals. So the question is does the Michael have to be Oil HaShulchan Malachim? Or does the way that the Michael is made have to be Oil HaShulchan Malachim? So some want to say that today, L'moshel, potatoes is Oil HaShulchan Malachim. You go to fairs, they take potato and they make a whole thing out of it, and they put a design. They make a mashed potato on top of the potato, and it's a side dish. But chips is not Oil HaShulchan Malachim. So that's why someone wants to say, it depends how you look at Oil HaShulchan Malachim. Will this thing be Oil HaShulchan Malachim? Now, when he says over here, a partial kidneys, I don't think that the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch holds that kidneys is not Oil HaShulchan Malachim. A partial kidneys is not Oil HaShulchan Malachim. But people eat beans and different kind of beans and vegetables. Or you could say that maybe they hold it. They just like the Aruch HaShulchan. People say that corn was a Michael for behemoths, so kidney is a Michael, but that's a little bit difficult. And he has over here. Yeah, okay, so now he says pas sheponov teichen bebeitzim. Also, mishum beitzim she'olov. This is a din that he's saying as a pas that's smeared with eggs. So even if you'll say that the pas is mutter, like those that hold that pas palter is mutter, so we're going to learn later that bishul akum is worse than pas akum. So now he's saying that if usually bread is not smeared with, but the Moshe say challah have a shine to them. How does it get the shine? Because they mix up eggs and they stand with a brush and they paint every challah. So he wants to say that that's also shem bishul akum. But the truth is, in the big Shulchan Aruch, they make a chiluk. It has to have a mamoshes of the egg. In other words, when you eat a slice of challah, you don't feel the egg. Even though the egg is smeared on the challah, you don't feel the egg. So he's talking over here where it's a thick layer, something like a pizza. Like in a pizza, they smear on a thick layer. The ketchup is a thick layer. The cheese is a thick layer. So he's talking that if on the pas, that the pas is something like a pizza where you smear on a layer of egg on it, so then that is considered, we don't say that the egg is bottled to the pas, but the egg is considered in itself a bishul. You have the pas itself goes into the question: are you making pas palter or not? There's a lot of people that are making pas palter, but bishul is worse. So this is considered bishul. In fact, there's a whole shaila when it comes to donuts. They say that I read about this once, that there's different ways how to make donuts. One way to make a donut is that you fry the donut in oil, but after you fry it, you bake the donut. And one way is where you don't bake it, but you just fry it. The whole thing from the beginning to end is fried in donuts. And different companies have different ways of making it. So they want to, in Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, by the Dinim of Suda, there's a Simon Kuf Samach Ches where he talks over there about different type of doughs. There's a dough that's Bigulei Ava, and there's a dough that's Bigulei Raka. In other words, there's a dough that is like a liquid dough, and there's a dough that is a hard dough. So, an example of Bigulei Raka will be by blintzes. How do you make blintzes? Blintzes is made with flour. You take flour and you mix eggs in it, and then you pour it on the frying pan, and it quickly gets shaped together. So that's called a bigula raka.
Wraps today.
Like a wrap. So, well, no, the wrap is a bigula ova.
It is,
It's thicker.
It's thicker.
Yeah, but it's not the same as a blintzer. So that shayla, what bracha to make on? So we all know that you eat a blintzer, you make a mezainis. It's considered mezainis. The dough of the donut is not a begula raka, it's a begula ova. It's a harder dough, and it gets fried in the oil, and then after that get baked, similar like a bagel. So over there, you may have to make a mezainis. But then some want to say that donuts is not oil al shulchan malachim. So there's no shaga. There's people that stop in the morning and say that they go to Dunkin', whatever, and they get a coffee and a donut. Now these people are not nizar. They're not concerned too much about Bishul Akum, and they're not concerned too much about Pas Akum. Well, what is their heter? The heter is that it's not Oigal Shulchan Malachim. The same as we learned now about the bread, that's made with different from rice. So there's rice bread. There's a lot of kind of bread today. So it could be a question of Bishul Akum, but it isn't because it's not Oshel. That's the heter that they want to use. The truth of my say is that for states of Frum Yidden don't do this. Frum Yidden don't go to a donut shop to buy a donut, or a coffee, or even I don't want to talk about what people do. I mean, some people they make them.
Starbucks is a ganze.
Huh? Yeah. Now he says also v'oisna the kikin. The kikin is a flat bread, a flat piece of bread. Shenefen al basil, that they're baked on iron. What iron means? It's hot pipes, and on it they put out this piece of dough, and it's not a real oven. It's not the real oven that we know as an oven, but that's what it means shenefon al basil. V'yesh lochosh, and you could be concerned that shenimshach habazel be'ezer shumim. Now, if you put a dough on a hot iron, it's going to stick to the dough. It's going to stick to the iron. So how do you prevent that it shouldn't stick and come out a baked product that you'll be able to take it off later? You smear the iron. So they use a shuman. Shuman is a fat. In some places they use what we call lard. Lard is a chazer fat. Is a surim b'chol inyan. These are. It's not a question of akum over here. The issue of akum has to do with chasnus. They wanted to keep you apart, not to get married, not to become very close to the good. And then we'll have so on a shayla by palta. Is there also a chasna? So, like I said when we started learning, that today is even a step further because it's like a lower level of palta. So people have their hatayim for it. But he says over here it's also mishum b'liyas issa because of the issa. Because that was smeared on it, and it goes into the bread. The dough is laying on it, goes into the bread. So you're not allowed to do it.
Halochos of Malachim is also because of chasnas.
Who?
That is only also because of Halochos of Malachim. That's also because of chasnas, because you would only close.
Well, because it's not a choshev of Michael, so
it doesn't matter.
It wouldn't. If someone gives you a present, okay, and the present isn't a double choshev, you don't really feel. You don't. Yeah. Pas Yisrael she'ofo oivek echavim, gora mi pas oivek echavim. I don't understand exactly these words over here, but I think what he wants to say, v'osu mishum bishul oivek echavim. I think what he wants to say over here is that bishul akum is worse than pas akum. Because by bishul akum comes to a problem that it could be not kosher pashut. But by pas, there was always one way to make bread. How do you make bread? You make bread, you take flour and water and you make bread. So there wasn't a shayla but still, bread is a very choshev, it's I could call it a staple item. People, lechem uvav enish yisod, so there wasn't a shayla so much of isser over there. There was a shayla of chasnas, but over here he says there's even a step further that it's also mishum bishul oivek echavim. Imloi hirshe and chasnas. There's chasnas also. So imloi hirshe as atana b'ashlochas eitz. If not unless the yid, see, he started by saying by Pastor Saul. So it means to say that the yid gave a bread. He made the flour and everything. He shaped the bread. And he gave it to Goy to put it in his oven to cook, to bake it. So that's what he's saying, that you'll say, this isn't a Pas Yisrael. Right? You'll say that. He says, no, it's worse. Why? What does it mean it's worse? It's not really worse, but it still has another problem too, a serious problem, that is called Bishul Yisrael, Bishul Akum. And Bishul Akum, it doesn't make a difference if the thing is kosher or treif. It's also, Bishul Akum may be one of the reasons why it's an important reason, more than, because by Bishul, it could be taka treif. And by Pas, usually, it's not treif. The flour and the water is not a shower, so the whole thing is chasnas. But by the Bishul, it's a step, it becomes another problem. So he says that now if it's Pas Yisrael, so if it's Pas Yisrael, so the Yid knows that it's not treif. He says still it has a din of Bishul Akum, and not unless he threw something in it. Now what does it mean he threw something in it? Like I explained yesterday. It could be that that the Yid is involved in the baking or in the cooking. And once the Yid is involved, so then it's like a simon. He knows that I had to do something. He knows already right away. I have to stay away from the goy. So now he says it's Tzrichli Zohar. Not everybody had an oven like today. A lot of people in the private homes have a commercial oven, but a Morgan Zeiten, they didn't have that. So what did they do when they had to make something bigger. How did they make chontamo? You know how to make chontamo? The people would mix whatever they want in the chont, and then they would bring it to the baker. It was a Yiddish baker, the Nachtum, and he would put it into his oven, and he would smear the door of the oven that no wind should get into it, and it stayed overnight over there, and then they opened up the oven Shabbos, and a person came and took on it, and it was an Eid for Shetzl. So people would come to the baker, he'd open up his oven, they would take out their chont and go home with the chont. So there was no problem, because the Jewish housewife, she prepared the chont, and the baker was a Yid. Now what happens if the baker in the city is not a Yid? That's against the problem already. Even if you prepared it, but the guy is baking it. So that's what he says now over here. But when it comes to the Indian, it says, so you have to be careful that sometimes you don't realize how it could be a problem of Bishul Akum. For example, he said, when they send to bake, someone's making a simcha, he needs a lot of bread for the simcha, so he sends the dough, he prepares everything, but he does him a favor to bake. So Shayisor Yashar Eitz L'Techatana, Oy Sheyaniach Hayisor as a pas, Oy HaMachvis L'Techatana. Now you notice over here, he says over here, he should throw in Eitz L'Techatana. Eitz L'Techatana means, so he's really a participant in the baking. They chop down a tree and then they make the tree into pieces. Like you see when you go by Tenenbaum in the matzah bakery, so right on the side of the oven there's a whole pile of lumber, and they throw in that. We are makel even more than that. We don't. So that helps in the baking, but al pidin we rely on a heta of a kisam. A kisam means a splinter, a small piece of wood. That's not every father don't rely on that so easily. So he says the Russian puts eight. Now today there became a bigger cooler. There are places today, different shadim. You have to know that they use a bulb. That there's a bulb in the oven, and by remote, you can sit in an office and put on the bulb, and they rely on that. Some shadim, not.
What does the bulb do?
It brings heat into the oven.
Enough heat to get the bake.
What do you need enough? And a kisam brings in enough to bake.
You're saying a Yid does that.
A Yid.
Inside the regular oven, they put on just a bulb.
The bulb is a regular. I don't know if it's a regular bulb or it's a bulb in the oven, and by remote control, by the office of the Heksher Geber, he wants to make it. And they call that Pas Yisrael or Bishul Yisrael. Many don't rely on that, but there are people that rely on that. And you have to know sometime, even if it says Bishul Yisrael, is it a Bishul Yisrael according to your standards? Okay, we have to stop over here. You know about the bulb?
I think the Starcade has them.
Huh?
The Starcade.
Okay, so